Hello everybody, welcome to another podcast. I'm Mod Osborne and they've given me charge of this podcast because Mod Matt, he's not here, the fools. This one's about quests and we've got some of the biggest questers in the room to talk to you, including Mod Kelpie.
Hello. Yes, not so much the biggest quester, I think.
But you're useful. I mean, you do the scheduling of quests, for example.
I can answer some of the more scheduling type questions today.
Super duper. And we've also got some genuine quest makers.
Mod Ollie.
Yeah.
I've been pretending I know how to make quests. Winging it.
Mod Stu, senior content developer. I recently developed Dimension of Disaster, done quite a few other quests. I love quests in general, I have a quest cape. If it was up to me, I'd work on nothing but quests, but unfortunately, it's not up to me.
I'd give you a job based on that. Awesome.
Can always look into that.
All right, so the pitch for the podcast is the Questivals ended. We were looking back at 200 quests, so why not look at the next 200 quests? Let's be ambitious.
200 more.
200 more, come on, let's rattle them out. And just I kind of put the question up on Twitter and on the forums, just asking people to deliver their most brutal, hardest to answer questions about quests and see if we can answer them satisfactorily. So, let's see if we can do it and be bold. Okay, so I'm going to kick it off. All right, with Ron Stat, who asked, 2012 saw 12 quests, some were voice acted. Why has the number gone down so drastically? Just a big quest frequency question.
Well, I think part of it, and the other guy, you guys will be able to explain a bit more into it probably, but is the general length we do put into quests these days, the amount of work that do go into them. They do take several months to develop.
Yeah.
And as we've been talking about with Mod Pip's blog on content frequency, we try to release on a weekly basis. And when you have these quests that are taking several months to develop, you can only develop so many at a time.
Yeah.
And so, that just kind of reduced the scope. But also when we do kind of tend to release like shorter quests, we do tend to get a lot of feedback on them being too short and such. Yeah. So there is a kind of expectance to them to be quite large and long.
Yeah, we've kind of set this up ourselves almost. We've moved towards like big event quests, like your World Wakes, your Fate of the Gods, 200th quest. They happen reasonably regularly. We're putting a lot of effort into them. They're quite bombastic. They've got big rewards. Some of them are voiced, things like that. So we're putting more effort in than we previously did. And there's almost an expectation that quests should be like that. You could argue that there is, we don't necessarily have to do that. That some smaller quests would be appreciated. And I think that's something we're discussing, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, this year we've already released several large quests.
Yeah.
There's at least another 2 currently in the works.
Yeah, that are reasonably big.
The other 2 quests that we're definitely doing this year are a little bit smaller. Yeah. So it'd be interesting to see how well those go down.
Yeah. Particularly because Mod Pips' blog has raised the question of if we did have a small number, a once per month, a big sized update with smaller updates punctuating that, how would quests fit into that? We've been kind of reopening the topic of things like bottle quests. Like, what would it be like if we went to a developer and say, okay, with a smaller amount of resource, but you just had complete control over that quest, what would you produce? Yeah. Clockwork Syringe, I remember, was done relatively quickly with a more limited graphical budget, but I still think that's a really strong quest.
Yes. I definitely think there's stuff that we can do. I think this whole update frequency thing, I certainly don't think you were going to get less quests. Whether or not we get more, it's not so much just this update frequency. It is about what we do with quests and such.
It's made us rethink how we create quests, or it will do, if depending where the blog goes, what the player response to it is.
Yes.
But definitely going to make us rethink how we do quests. I mean, what would you do would you be able to create quests with a lower graphical budget?
Certainly. In fact, I think that one of the things with Dimension of Disaster was that initially it needed a lot of content development time, but not so much graphics time. Because we had a team dedicated to doing it, we found that the environment artists finished early and they started doing a lot of visual gag references and taking bits of scenery and making
still can't beat that salmon in a bottle. That
kind of thing. And we didn't initially plan to completely rebuild the palace, for example. We were going to see if we could maybe try and settle for it and reuse the environment a lot more. So I think that we could do a lot more projects that are content driven and reuse the wealth of assets we already have to make
and just let the story
quests.
Dictate it, like the quality of the story be the centerpiece. Could you do that, Mod Ollie? Having been in some of the most
I like to do my big extravagant bombastic quests and leave a mark, but yeah, definitely the first thing that I think of when I'm designing is what stuff can be reused, what sort of mileage can we get out of what we've already got. And because I mean, there's a lot of times when, like you say, we've had extra environment time or like extra graphics time in some aspect where we've sort of just added things in because we have the time, but getting everyone to spend like an even amount of time on a quest and making sure that the work is even for everyone is a really difficult challenge. And to bring it back to the original question, voice acting, that's just like, you basically just have to add an extra time chunk onto the end of a project, because you have to have all the dialogue in place already, and then you have to make that into a script. You have to take it like down to London or wherever all the voice actors are, direct it, get it back, get it in game. It's
such fun. I do like it.
It's wonderful. I absolutely loved it, but it's just, it's just adding.
It brings everything forward, doesn't it? Because you have to perfect everything earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're right.
You have to remember like the business side of things as well, though it does cost as well, all those voice actors and such.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, all right. So moving on to the next difficult question. Hellring, we should have more flexibility in allowing series curators to work on their own quests. For example, we've got Mod Anna, who Hellring says should be working on vampires. Mod Raven should be, guaranteed to work on Rite of Passage. Why isn't this happening? Oh, it's a tough one.
I mean, yeah, we're split into our teams, so people know about them because
the Guardians,
the Guardians, the Dukes, the
Nameless,
Team 1, the Nameless.
Are they really calling themselves the Nameless?
I don't like it. I call them Team 1 still. And then we have like the Ninjas, which is obviously Mod Anna is part of, and it's difficult because we try to make the teams where possible like self-dependent. They can all work on stuff. And obviously, with Anna being in the ninja team, then she's focused on ninja stuff. But she has had a big involvement in the Vampire Quest, like the design stage, and stuff. And I think she's perfectly happy with it. I don't think she's
chuffed to bits. She really is. She loves it to bits. So really impressed with Mod Ollie's kind of design. She wants to get involved with doing some of the boss mechanics, get involved with writing Vaniscula's dialogue. She has said that she couldn't have done it better herself. So, there is that.
Yes.
But I can completely understand, like, people love Mod Anna and people loved Mod Titan before Mod Anna and wanted Mod Titan to be writing Branches of Darkmare, but Branches of Darkmare came out well.
Yes.
Ultimately, like, Mod Anna is really good at leading the ninja team. And if you took away from the ninja team, then, there'd be impacts elsewhere. It really helps that we're of our own team. We can own that project. The Guardians can take the vampires and we can have responsibility for it and make sure it's perfect rather than drafting in from various places, which just kind of unbalances the whole production and planning.
I definitely don't think the project will suffer from not having Anna developing every single aspect of it and such.
So. Quest series span years, and to have someone in the same position to be able to develop every single quest in a series, it's just so unlikely to happen. So, I mean, and this hits home a little bit for me as well, because if Rite of Passage,
it's going to happen.
If Rite of Passage wins, I might be the one developing that.
Yeah.
Which obviously is Mod Raven's sort of brainchild. And everyone's like, he has to be the one developing it.
Yeah, and exactly. Especially him. I think he's got daggers at the ready kind of thing.
I'm going to have to sort of fight him for it. But no, I'm sure he'd have a massive amount of involvement anyway. So it's not like the design doc. Which you probably kind of reference. So I would really kind of push you to own it yourself. But exactly. I don't want to be like, just take the design doc and code it. But at the same time, he's put a lot of thought into it, and people love it, all the little tidbits of information he's been giving out so far. So, we'd get him involved as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you let anybody do a Death of Chivalry 2?
It's a difficult one. I mean, ideally, I would like to do it myself, but certainly, if it was done by somebody else, I know that I'd have the opportunity to get involved in the design stage and try to shape it as much as possible and have some oversight during development.
What's great is that we, like a lot of the people who make the quests, who have been developers on quests, we all sort of trust each other to make good quests. So I know that if, Stu was to take over the next one in the line of Missing, Consumed, Death, Dishonor Among Thieves, I'd be confident that he'd
That's it. There's a huge amount of respect between all of them. That sort of thing. I mean, you can't forget, like, the Vampire Quest, Mod Anna is design reviewer on it. We made a design review on it, so that she's integrated into that. And hey, like Mod Osborne, he did both heated branches of Dartmare as well. Why not?
Yeah.
That's the guarantee of quality, seal of quality.
Seal of approval. The Osborne seal of approval.
There we go. I like talking about myself in the third person. It makes me feel important. Anyway, Hums has asked, will we ever see long, super high level quests like While Gothic Sleeps in the future?
I think it's certainly possibly.
Yeah.
Possibly.
I think it's certainly possibly.
There's no particular reason why it can't happen, but it's not the case of we make a quest super long for the sake of it. I think it's a case of do we really feel like the narrative needs it? And
yeah, I feel like people don't know how long that actually took to develop.
It's the biggest quest we've ever done.
Wasn't it like a year and 6 months or something?
It wasn't that long. It was certainly it had at one point 3 developers on it.
Oh right,
as did Ritual of the Madrat. They were both 8 months, I think, 8 months of development, something like that. Which, when we normally do, the average length of a quest creation is 4 months.
Yeah.
So it's kind of double the length of your traditional quest.
Okay.
It's
I heard it a little bit exaggerated there.
Yeah, I've heard some long times knocked about.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
I think some people might say when it started is when they initially started talking about it.
Conception,
and then nothing happens with it for 4 months, and then someone actually starts developing it.
Yeah,
because they've now got the time. But back then also, we didn't work in the teams, and you didn't have the support of other developers and such. It was one developer per project, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. This one was one of the first where we drafted in help. It's actually quite interesting when you break down the question, because we have had quests as long as While Gothic Sleeps, in particularly Dimension of Disaster. People have been playing that for 3 hours or 6 hours in the actual area, and trying to figure out what people really liked about While Gothic Sleeps. And I don't think it's purely length. I think it's that kind of building. So a number of quests led up to it. Feels like a culmination. It's really deep storytelling, as in, you have to know everything that happened previously. There's a lot of characters. It's got that kind of Game of Thrones aspects of an ensemble cast. And I think there's a lot of this that people are talking about when they're asking about wanting While Gothic Sleeps again. And that's what I'm trying to get a grasp on. And I think that as these storylines build up, the Dragonkin, the Elder Gods, and the Stone of Jazz, I think they can lead to that.
Yeah, we're building towards it.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's what it was at the time as well, what it introduced to the game. Like, nothing on that level had been seen before.
Yeah.
And then the rewards it introduced as well and things like that. It was just this whole thing that blew people's minds.
I think if you dropped Fate of the Gods into the game 6 or 7 years ago like that was, I think it might have had a similar effect. But yeah, I've been constantly grasping at what While Gothic Sleeps brought, what people liked about it, and trying to reclaim a bit of it. Sometimes it's the old school questing as well. It's something that we kind of play with, like Dimension of Disaster does a bit of old school questing.
Yeah, and more of a focus on exploration, kind of traversing across the world, really feeling like a hero, or going on a large, significant, epic adventure.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, another good question from Armadin. How do you determine which topics are kind of Rune Labs quests, and which topics are Jagex quests? This is quite a hard question to decipher.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of similar to with anything on Rune Labs, where we've talked about stuff before. If we've actually got a plan to do something in the near future, or it doesn't necessarily have to be the very near future, but we definitely got a plan, we know exactly what we want to do with it, then we won't let that be kind of done through Rune Labs, because we know what we want to do.
Yeah.
Whilst stuff that we've kind of discussed, like rites of passage, and then never really done, and we don't have a plan to do this ourselves, particularly in the next year or so, or whatever, it then becomes, we're then happy to accept that on Rune Labs. It's kind of, we never throw away ideas, but we do have a lot of them, and there is a big list of stuff that we would like to release and stuff, and so stuff that kind of falls down that list, we're happy to take on Rune Labs because it kind of bumps it up, really. That's the same request, really. Yeah,
I kind of see them as two different overlapping pools. So Sixth Age I see as kind of forming more the Jagex quest. We know the kind of story beats that we want to hit with Elder Gods, Dragonkin, and the Stone of Jazz. So it's a case that really, largely, those are Jagex quests, and we're trying to own those. So there's still an element of surprise, and there's still an element of control, that we know what we're doing with that story. But there are also a number of other quests which overlap with Rune Labs, and these are quests like continuations, Elemental Workshop 5, Pirates, Rites of Passage, and Gnome Finale, Desert Quest, all of these things, they are on our backlog, we know about them, but Rune Labs has the opportunity of kind of leapfrogging those quests to the top of the front of the queue kind of thing. And I think that's a good way of doing it. I mean, it does create the problem that some people have highlighted, which is that Rune Labs occasionally feels like lots of players just picking Jagex ideas rather than their own. We want to maintain a balance between those.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's cool. I mean, like you seeing these ideas that we've discussed before, and players still being excited for them and stuff, and going, yeah, like we should do that, and that's cool. At the same time, though, it's really awesome, like seeing like brand new ideas that we haven't discussed.
I'd love to see more of those. Yeah, certainly, like Rune Labs, if there was with a quest category, for example, seeing like genuinely kind of player created.
Yeah, and there will be this year. There will be one of the upcoming criterias will be for a quest on the smaller side. Not quite sure what, but it's probably going to be a small or medium.
Right, but a quest would be in that
sized,
slot.
Yeah, and a quest in that slot. And obviously there isn't the length to do like a rites or passage type quest within that criteria. So it'd be interesting what comes up.
Yeah, I mean, how would you feel working on a Rune Labs quest? Would you feel like you couldn't own it, or it wasn't yours, or would you see it as an opportunity?
It's not that dissimilar from the core aims we might have for a quest that's been chosen in-house. That'll already have constraints set that define the focus of it.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of whether it came from a player or whether it came from our managers, really.
Yeah, so it's very similar, isn't it?
An idea on Rune Labs, like it could be really well fleshed out, and we might have to like dial back on it a bit, because if someone lays out an entire quest with the ending and everything on there or something, and that gets voted and wins, we obviously couldn't do the quest in exactly the ending and everything like that, because people would just know exactly what's coming. So there has to be some sort of element of control on our part, but obviously we want to keep as much for the original vision of the...
I like what we've been doing at the moment. I mean, Mod Stu and I have been talking on Skype with players about, there's some points that we can't actually include. Can we come to a compromise, and just kind of discussing it with them? I really like that. I think that's worked quite
cool.
well. So probably, I would imagine, follow a similar pattern.
Yeah, I just really agree with Ollie there, that when reading through like quest ideas and Rune Labs, that they are kept open-ended. You do let mods steer them a bit more, and then particularly on like the endings and stuff, you don't like spoilers and stuff. I mean, the very first Rune Labs idea suggested was a Raxor quest, and just kind of left it very much open, gave like the general theme of it and stuff, and that sounds pretty cool, and the guys can do a lot with that, and still keep like the person who submitted it guessing.
There's a lot to be said for it. I mean, from a practical perspective, if a Rune Labs idea is a bit shorter, more people are going to read it as well. And I mean, I hate to say it.
Yeah.
Like brevity does help in getting more votes.
Yeah, a broad pitch is more useful to us and to the reader than having a detailed design established ahead of time.
Cool. All right, so continuation quests have had gaps of many years between them, but 6th Age quests are released every few months. How can we justify that? That's from Lord Drakan. I'm happy to leap in on this one if you want.
Go for it.
So the sheer number of stories that are still open from older pieces of content. I mean, I remember Lord Drakan actually pitching this in a question quite a while ago. He even mentioned Druid quests, which... it was a storyline I'd kind of half forgotten about almost. There are so many unfinished storylines out there. Our intention with the 6th Age was actually as a reaction against that feeling of just kind of relaxed every kind of few years an elf quest would pop out. It was the idea of that you'd have some storylines that you could actually serialize and have in a short period of time. 2 a year of maybe God quests, once a year of Dragon King quests. You could feel a storyline that's progressing. The counterpoint to that is, why don't we just finish all of the continuation quests? That would have taken, you could probably argue there are 20 or 30 storylines that we could have continued or ended, some of which need 2 or 3 to finish that storyline. So my feeling was, get some variety, have some 6th Age quests which could kind of rapid frequency, continue to finish off continuation quests, still do them, do these Elemental Workshop 5s, do these kind of elf quests and things like that, but just have a mix of them.
I mean, also, with our kind of continuation quests, they are all kind of like reaching the end of that quest chain.
Yeah.
And the expectation, again, like kind of going back to some, before is, that they kind of be like Grandmaster type quests, and they do have a lot of length to them, and
which of course is what
you can, and as we said, like we can only do so many large things at a time, and also you want throughout a year you want to have like a mix of levels of type quests. You want some that pretty much anyone can jump in and play, and then you want some for high level players and or experienced questers. So you don't want to fill up a whole year of Grandmaster conclusion quests, really. So.
We just sit there with a release schedule trying to get that variety right, don't we? And it's a case of, like, we looked this year and we knew that we wanted some people have accused us, for example, of just doing 6th Age quests all the time, God quests all the time, and some people wanted to have the older stuff. But very much we're looking at that more. We got the 200th quest was very much there to be a nostalgic reference to all of those older quests. We had the Elf finale recently. Vampires is also this year. I think every year we're going to try to get that balance. And Rune Labs is really helping in the sense that it's pointing out what quests are actually more important to the player base than we thought. Like, I think Elemental Workshop has really surprised me at how popular it is. And I think that's really risen up my kind of mental hierarchy of quests, as it were. I'm just going to skip to the next question. I'm gasping.
I was going to say it links back to the last question, but you took that point. You went there, so.
Damn it. All right. So there's general confusion about the 5th Age and 6th Age. For example, you can skip story to play World Wakes. There are characters in game who know about the Stone of Jazz, while there are characters who don't, because we're kind of in that weird in-between place of 5th and 6th Age. So it's a question about, are we planning anything to combat this from Ronstadt?
Not really. We did do the initial thing of obviously making sure that when you start a quest, it tells you whether it's 5th Age or not.
Yeah.
But beyond that, no. Yeah. It was a decision we made when we were kind of doing the whole RS3 thing, wasn't it?
That's it. We wanted to kind of accelerate things
with this kind of moving into the 6th Age, and we didn't want to lock everyone out. Of the 6th Age, we wanted to make it accessible to all.
Yeah, the way things were done before with having quest requirements meant that, if we were getting to a point where we release any quests of interest, you had to go through a ton of quests to get to them, and then all the new content that's coming out, the new quests that are coming out, new players can't play, and we get into a point where getting people into our game, they've only got old content to go and access, and they can't get into the new stuff. So like the 6th Age was sort of like a way of letting people jump into the storylines that we have. Yeah. So like someone used an analogy, like we've got this big giant tree full of lore, and when players come into the game, all the new players, they've got no way of getting up into the tree. So like the 6th Age was like giving them a rope ladder.
They were just giving them some old branches to try to climb.
Exactly,
let's spread this analogy. Let's keep it going. I love it.
I don't know how far we can make that go. It's quite limited.
That's it. I mean, that doesn't mean we're not aware of. Like some players are really worried about new players coming to the game and not understanding the story, that it feels conflicted. There's a 5th Age and a 6th Age kind of route through the game content. So I am still aware of that. My feeling is that rather than kind of branding things as 5th Age and saying those were in the past, I think probably the better approach was to brand things as 6th Age and just say, look, you are going to be entering into a storyline that is happening. Kind of, this is the newest version of the story, the most kind of latest version of the story.
It is something that's like in the forefront of our minds whilst we're developing stuff as well. Yeah. We know full well that some players won't have done quests so with Dishonor Among Thieves using an example, some players hadn't done Nomad's Requiem. Yeah. So we know that, but we really want to reintroduce this cool character back into the game that we can use, and everyone wanted him back in the game. So it's like we make sure that for new players that haven't done that, we'll maybe check their variables and give them an introduction or something. Yeah. So we know if they haven't met him, we'll sort of introduce who he is, and we try and make it so that old players who've done that other stuff don't have to jump through a load of hoops. They don't, that they already know about him, and we can then help the new players along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so then we move on to the next question. So any clues to what the god in the 201st quest will be? So, Mod Ollie, can you reveal anything more?
I actually can't.
No.
Because Mod Wilson, his mod name is? Mod Wilson.
Right.
He's leading the development on it. He's very keen to keep things under wraps. So, so it's not really my place to sort of...
I like the idea that we kind of... doing a Who Shot Mr. Burns kind of thing, can you guess who this god is? Because there is some kind of familiarity about this god.
Yeah,
so we want people guessing. We're going to play around with that with a lot of the lead up to it. There's so much rug pulling in this quest, it's unbelievable. We're kind of teasing, and then there's going to be kind of twists and changes.
I'm trying to think of any little tidbits I can give, but at this point it's just it's still
interesting to know that this quest is an exercise in twists. Like previously, World Wakes was when we were announcing this as a Guthix Tomb quest.
Yep.
We kind of changed it up a little bit. You know, this was all part of us playing with the marketing.
It's like Missing Presumed Death as well. It was like about death and Icthorin at the start or whatever, and then suddenly it's like, bam, all the gods are there.
We're doing something similar.
It's nice to be able to sort of not lay it all out on a plate for people before they get there, and keep some of it under wraps so that you know what you're getting into, but you don't quite know where it's going. And
it's that variety thing again. Sometimes it's another thing we look at when we've got the release schedule of, this is a quest that a lot of people know everything about. You know, vampires, you know you're going into Castle Drakan, you know you're seeing Lord Drakan, you know it's going to be a culmination of the Myreki storyline. It's quite nice to have those quests where you can say, actually, you know what, we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not going to do much about that at all, and I think that's really nice to get that balance.
Or Death of Chivalry, I tried to hold back the hype on that one because people were expecting it to just be a rework of Black Knight's Fortress.
Yeah. So
trying to not introduce any of the story elements if we could help it in the BTS, so that it was a nice surprise and it felt like a bigger story than people expected when we finally got it.
You've got it. It's quite hard not to talk about everything a lot of the time, particularly for some of us. I can't help it.
Especially when we're so excited about it. We spend months making it and we're like, I just want to tell everyone.
You're doing live streams and you just kind of, nope, can't talk about that.
Well, it's like right now, we're just biting my lip about this Quest 201.
So we want to keep that. I know we're in this kind of climate of doing live streams and podcasts and things like that, but some secrecy is good. Is there any chance of continuing the theme or the world, the dimension of disaster?
Well, there's certainly a lot that we could do with that notion. I mean, and it's got unlimited potential. And from a development standpoint, being able to have a environment separate from the rest of the world where you can reuse old assets and ideas and not have it affect the lore of the rest of the game is very liberating, and we can very rapidly create things that are unique and different and fresh. But I was asked to ensure that this didn't expect any kind of sequel, that we wouldn't do any more with it. So maybe if there's a high Rune Labs demand, maybe we might do more of it, but at the moment we don't have any plans to.
I definitely agree with you. It's that kind of, I remember Mod Mark coming over and saying, didn't want it to feel like it needs a sequel, want to be very kind of encapsulated. He didn't plan to use that world ever again, so just have fun. But I really do see this is the power of Rune Labs. It's not on our list, but if there really is that kind of momentum behind it on Rune Labs, then of course we'd look at it. I don't think it's a story that we'd say definitely no, we're not going to do that at all. Like, you know, if a Rune Labs idea said bring back Guthix, you know, he was really alive all along kind of thing. I don't think we'd do that. But I think a sequel to this we would definitely consider.
Yeah, sure.
Why not? Put that on the backlog. What's the truth about quest replaying? Will it ever be possible? Because this question rises so often.
Not impossible. I mean, we've already introduced it with some of our recent quests. Because quests in the past haven't been made that way, there is a fair amount of work you have to do to go back and change them and such. I know some of you have been looking into this, you can provide more.
Yeah, go on, Mod Stu, tell us about that.
Yeah, myself and Mod Days are both hoping to look into in our tap, seeing if we can use the skill reset infrastructure that's been built to see if we can decouple our highest level quests from that and see if we can maybe introduce those as separate resets without doing the skill reset. So I think that those are some of the quests that players most want to reset. I think there's probably only a few that people would really want to necessarily go back and replay, the ones that are most significant in lore. And conveniently, those are usually the ones at the end of the tree where there's going to be less dependencies on later content where it's more viable. And then beyond that, we look at making content replayable where we add new quests. But I don't know if there's necessarily been enough uptake on things like Broken Home and Dimension of Disasters replay for it to be worthwhile.
It's a tough one because on the flip side of that, those quests aren't the kind of typical ideal examples of a quest that should be replayed. There's not too much branching in there in terms of choice. And I think there's a lot of kind of players haven't played Wild Gothic 6, haven't played Ritual of the Magic for a long period of time, and they really just want to interact with it again without setting up a new character because they're high-level quests. They would take quite a while to get to, I would imagine. I would really like to do a kind of a batch of 3 or 4, you know, maybe toss in Face of the Gods and World Wakes, maybe
It's the kind of thing that's ideal for a poll.
Yeah, exactly.
Look it up, see what the players want to replay, and then maybe we can do a small batch.
People vote with their feet, kind of. If they go there and if they play it, then that would just generate more interest in doing more batches. Maybe we do the whole of a storyline, the vampire storyline, for example, you know, or the goblin quests. I'd really like to try that out. There's obviously you could go even further. I really like the notion of Quest Plus. You know, that I would play through this replayed quest, but there would be director's commentary, or there'd be a hard mode version of the boss, or there'd be alternate dialogue in the same way that you get unabridged versions of the sagas, that sort of thing. So it's just a case of how much it costs to do it, how much it's appreciated, whether or not it's worth doing it on certain quests or all of them, that sort of thing. Yeah, I think we're excited. It's more likely now than ever before, I think. Do you agree?
With like the experiments we've like, it's good having both of us here with the ones who've like made some replayable quests
content.
Yeah, so we've like had our forays into the replayable quest zone, and I mean it's certainly possible, and yeah, it's just whether the development time required would be like enough players would be interested in it to make that worthwhile. So I guess we keep getting asked it. So,
yeah, exactly. There must be a reason why that's happening.
Yeah,
cool. All right, why haven't we released any quests with level 99 requirements? Ask Hums.
We kind of like see people who like quest. We have questers and such. They're not the same sort of players as like skillers and combat experts and such.
Yeah,
and so you blocking quests with like higher requirements does mean that some people will have to engage with content that they might not particularly want to engage with.
Yeah.
But having said that, I think as time goes by, quest requirements will get higher and higher.
Yeah.
And it might get to the point where you do require 99s, but
yeah.
I think that's quite a way off.
I think you're right. I think it's really nice that quests have provided a ramp up skill levels. Mm-hmm. Like whenever there's been a new skill requirement that's high, it's generally only been a few levels higher than the previous high. Mm-hmm. And so that's just kind of teasing people into training, to particularly quest players, into leveling up through quests. Mm-hmm. To suddenly drop down 99 when it's 20 levels above the next highest. That's a huge gap, a huge chasm to overcome. And I prefer to just kind of tease up there.
It's like we were discussing before, like we've got all these new quests for the 6th age and we're building them up.
Yeah.
And it's going to get to a point eventually where we're just releasing new quests that have all got high requirements again. So we need to be careful we don't do that like before and we just end up with a load of quests that people can't access. So yeah, that's the sort of ramp up that we're going for, but we're nowadays a bit more savvy to the fact that we introduce the novice ones as well along the way.
But we're doing a lot of Grandmaster quests and Master quests, and whenever they come around, there's a push from me or Mod Mark to have one of those requirements being the highest in slot, as it were. The best for the highest for Slayer, the highest for Agility. They are kind of naturally teasing upwards, so it is going to hit that at some point. You just don't expect it to happen frequently, I guess.
So when we have that massive culmination quest, which is 99 in all skills.
Comp cape. Comp cape.
But return on investment is a frequent concern. That we need to ensure that, particularly with quests, with projects that are as large as they are, that there's enough of an audience to justify the amount of time we spend on them. So, for example, with Dimension of Disaster, originally my early designs, I was hoping for it to be a direct sequel to Recipe for Disaster.
Yeah.
But with requiring so many quests, that meant that there was a much smaller proportion of our player base would actually be able to play that quest. Yeah. So I was asked to make it a lot more accessible. You could just go in there right from the start with no requirements, and then gradually ramp up with some of the higher levels.
You still end on a master kind of thing. Yeah, absolutely. All right, last question. It's kind of a two-parter, I guess. So which quests are we interested in working on in the future? And are there any quests that have fallen out of favour? I think this is more kind of asked of Jagex, I guess. Because previously we've said things like, Floor 61, we really want to do that. Desert Quest, we really want to do that. Has there been any change in that? Are there any that we really want to do? Any that have fallen out?
I guess you've got your pillars, your 6th age type
6th
stuff.
Age is still there.
You've kind of talked a bit about earlier on like what we want to do. Don't really know if anything's kind of fallen out.
I think there's been some. It's largely the same, but I think there has been some rejigging. Mentioned Elemental Workshop. Mm-hmm. So Rune Labs for me has helped to highlight some things that are higher priority than I thought. Rite of Passage is the obvious one. Elemental Workshop 5 is another. I think God Sagas has really interested me. How often we see that in like the first couple of pages with Rune Labs.
Yeah.
There's some interesting stories that could be told there, but yet there are also some ideas that I think of. 461, for example, is one that I'd be really interested to know if players are as interested as I originally thought they were. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it lost the poll. I haven't seen much on the forums about it. I know that Dishonored Among Thieves talked a lot about the similar topics. Mm. Some people feel like the story's already been told for Floor 61, and it's also obviously very exclusive. So I wonder if that's dropped in player perception about whether or not people really want it as much. So that's kind of fallen down my hierarchy. I'd love to be told otherwise. But
I think there's still, just to reassure the players, there's still a lot of story to be told there.
Yeah.
But when it lost in the poll, what was it up against? You remember what it was up against? 461
Vampires.
Vampires, yeah. And yeah, when it lost, it was like, well, okay, that could be a while off now, so we'll reveal some of the secrets in Dishonour Among Thieves. But I think the polls definitely helped to sort of rejig things, like you were saying, in our minds. But there's also a lot of quests that I think players don't even know that we're thinking about as well.
Yeah,
obviously each developer has like sort of something going on in their heads. Like, I would love to do an Underworld quest, and I don't think anyone really has given that much thought. But yeah, that's for me. That's like, I would love to work.
Yeah, straight up Amiska versus Icthalarian. We've already talked about the passage to the Underworld.
Get death involved as well.
Get death. Yeah, I mean, that's crazy cool. Of course it would be. And you've got quests on your kind of back burner that you'd love to work on, haven't you, Mod G?
Yeah, for example, I knocked together a design for a intermediary quest, just reusing the Black Knight's Fortress environment before we commit to the resources for doing the Death of Chivalry quest, just to tie up some loose ends there and just decide who's ruling over the fortress and things like that nature.
It was kind of a knight's quest, wasn't it? Not like, Suroin or Saradomin or Lord of Caris. It was kind of a knight's quest, wasn't it?
I think that'd be a good example of the kind of bottle quests that are content focused but not requiring very much in the way of other resources that we could potentially do in the future.
And of course you've got your Suroin Centaur Saradomin quest that you'd love to do as well.
I really want Stu to do his Black Knight's Fortress one. I keep on always using that as an example when I'm talking to you about smaller quests and such.
Yeah, absolutely. Mod Doctor would really love to do Elemental Workshop, and I think we could do that in a similar bottle quest way. Not everything has to be showboating, momentous, gods dying all over the place. It can be done.
Although we do love that.
We do love a good dying god.
I've got some quest ideas as well, but someone keeps on shutting them down. So.
Do they involve bees or boomerangs?
No boomerangs in quests, but certainly plenty of bees.
Excellent. I really some of the quests that I've been pitched over the time. I still like the Hangover style quest. I know Icthalarian Little Helper has done it a little bit, but the whole Memento kind of working your way backwards through kind of memories and stuff like that is really nice. Yeah, we've all got our pet projects. Go on, get one of them out, Mod Kelpie. One of your stories?
Bees.
What would your bees quest be about?
Bees who do divination and become sentient, based on the fact that they've now got Guffix's memories, and they seek out the World Guardian to help steer them.
So do these bees think they're Guffix?
No, they're just aware of Guffix and World Guardian and stuff.
Gotcha.
I was reading some sci-fi book, and it had like these aliens that had been, another alien race had just given them, kind of like made them sentient, but they were kind of just like lost. And so the author didn't really explain them enough for my liking, so
you carry on
a quest. I was like, this would be cool to explore.
There we go.
So if that came on Rune Labs,
Sorry, can I interject? Isn't it sentient?
Sentient.
I can't.
I didn't want to correct you.
We did kind of half correct, but it's fine.
Yeah, well,
go for it.
I can't speak properly. I don't know English.
Are you referring to your sentient comment?
Yes, I am. And many other ones that I get taken into account. I was on stream yesterday and I got a few tweets for mispronouncing several words.
Any in particular?
Stuff to do with rites of passage and all those names.
Yeah, I mean, I can't blame you.
Well, the Armadile.
Yeah, I just wrote down like some notes and I had like the planet name and I was just like,
I have no idea.
I'd just try and get like Og to talk about that one and then he pronounced it all wrong anyway. And corrected him, yes.
Yeah, fab. So there, you've heard it first. So this podcast was all about the next 200th quest. It turns out they will mostly be about bees. I think they're Guffix.
Sentient bees.
I don't think they're bees.
Sounds sweet. Sounds like a beautiful future.
Yeah, it'd be a shame if that appeared on Rune Labs, wouldn't it?
With camel stacking. There we go. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining me on the couch.
Thank you,
guys. It's been lovely talking to you about the next 200th quest, and I hope you enjoyed listening to it. And we'll see you next week with another podcast. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.